Welcome, everybody, to our episode 15 of SaaS Monday Live on Friday. Just a quick note, we will be changing the name of the stream here for the next episode, so it'll still be episode 16, but we're going to be changing the name, and I'm going to wait. You guys have to wait till next week to see what the new clever name that we come up with, or the new clever name that ChatGPT suggests for us. And so it's a really fun session today. We're going to talk about the evolution of Postgres as a service from RDS to serverless. We're blessed to have two of the early founders, two of the minds kind of leading this conversation in the thread. So Kamal, who will be on the thread in just a second, he was early days AWS. He built out he helped build out some of the first managed Postgres services ever at AWS, actually before AWS was called AWS. And we're joined today by Tudor as well, who's CTO of Xata, or Zeta. You get to kind of choose your pronunciation there. Both of them are kind of fun to say. He's a two-time player or multiple-time player in the startup spaces. His last opportunity in terms of Packetbeat was acquired by Elastic. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of his journey to get here when we get here. But he's at a new startup. We're going to talk about what they're doing, and they're talking about extending that managed Postgres into the future. So we've got a lot to talk about in terms of where this stuff came from, where this stuff is going, and then we're also joined by the friend of the stream and my friend Marcus, who is a all-around SaaS specialist. Works at AWS, focuses on helping a bunch of AWS startups go from little to big, and he's got a pretty good track record of doing that. And so I'm going to pause real quick and just kind of let everyone kind of introduce themselves, and I'll start with Marcus because I did your intro last. So Marcus, can you introduce how you got here and what you're looking forward to today?
Yeah, sure. So thanks again for having me, and I'm looking forward for an interesting session. So my name is Marcus. Yes, I'm working for AWS. And within the AWS, I'm particularly looking after startups in Germany and the German-speaking market in Europe. And the way we are looking at startups is that we are already covering startups when they are really early stage. So, pre-seed, seed funding, and so on. But we kind of go along with them. I'm working with a lot of companies that have Series A funding, B funding, sometimes even later stages, and that's really interesting to see how they develop, how their scale changes over time, and exactly this is also what I'm keen to learn and to help with is the scale, right? So there's a technical component to scale, but there is also like, hey, what we can do as AWS, with the ecosystem, with the large customer set that we have, with the marketing power to help these startups really scale.
Excellent. And so, Tudor, we're going to have you go a little bit long and extended because I want you to have an opportunity to kind of talk about the Xata and where you're at today. So, Kamal, if you wouldn't mind going next, as a quick setup to Kamal, especially as it relates to the technology today, I'll make a bold statement that there is absolutely no one on this stream who's listening to our stream today who hasn't interacted with a service that Kamal helped design or touch. And so at his days at Kafka and at Confluent and what Kafka is doing and its global reach, his days with AWS and their global reach and all the different services he touched at AWS, it would be really hard to find anyone in the modern Western world who hasn't used a service that hasn't been influenced by something Kamal's designed. But so with that setup there, Kamal, can I talk about your journey and how we got here?
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. I think a lot of people came together for all of the missions. So thanks to all the community and friends and colleagues who work together on many of these things together. But yeah, I was one of the early days founders of the AWS. It was early days was called Foundational Web Services, FWS internally. And so we started working on a bunch of cloud services, started with EC2, load balancer, and S3. And then from there was no stoppage. I personally worked on many of the databases, caching, queuing services over there, mainly focused on data and building the cloud services around them. My latest or the last stint at AWS was Aurora, where I spent actually the significant amount of my career of AWS over there, starting off as a first engineer and then running the entire Aurora database team. And then I moved on to the Confluent, where I ran took on the similar challenge of running the Kafka across all the channels, and primarily just focused. The main aspect was the open source and the platform side of the on-prem platform side was already built out, so that was we had to scale that. But I think the main part was cloud. And throughout my journey, like we noticed as I was going, especially doing the transition from AWS to Confluent, some of the things we take so much for granted inside AWS are not so true when you go outside and you become a consumer. Some of the knowledge is not obvious. So how to build and operate cloud services was not obvious. And I think that learning an operational aspect, what was taken for granted inside AWS and how much you will know about AWS services was lacking outside AWS. So it was eye-opening that way. And how much effort and energy it took to piece it together from culture point of view, from technology point of view, from just bringing all the functions together to make the cloud function successful at Confluent, basically gave the birth to Omnistrate, which we thought about that shouldn't be that hard to build managed services in the cloud, essentially. And it shouldn't be taking 20 to 30% of the engineering to build the managed services as opposed to building the core product, which was fundamentally my frustration at every single job I was doing. Like it was okay building it once, but every time I was building a product, the 25% of the organization was focusing on building the managed service aspect as opposed to core product or innovation, which basically, so we decided to build Omnistate to make it easier. And in the world shouldn't be reinventing that, essentially.
Love it, and totally agree. And I think there's a lot of topics there that we're actually going to dive into a little bit, especially as we get into what does managed Postgres mean, and why are folks focused? Why are we talking about managed Postgres versus the hey, there's an open source Postgres out there. Why do I need a management service? And so to kind of set that conversation up and to tee it up, Tudor, can you kind of walk through your journey to get here, because you do have a fun and interesting story, because you've already had successful exits. What kind of drove you to seeing, hey, because a lot of people were saying, hey, the database is dead, we're all going to go cloud services and all the rest of it, and it turns out that's not true. And there's a vibrant open source community around Postgres. There's also these managed services around it, and there's a future there. So what brought you to Xata, and where are we going? Why you saw that opportunity?
Yeah, and we started by now quite a bit of time, a number of years ago. It's like 4 years when we started Xata. Our initial idea was a little bit different. We wanted to make a database service, a cloud database service that's as easy as possible to use as you can make it. So we wanted something that people that use low-code tools can use it, and so on. So that's where we started, and I think we did a pretty good job. We have quite a good number of users of that profile. It's like they build a lot of like personal projects. They build there are many non-profits on that platform. We call this now Xata Lite, and we actually have morphed a little bit, and right now what we're doing is a Postgres platform. So it's very, like we're putting all our bets on Postgres essentially. And it's a Postgres platform that addresses some of the problems around Postgres that companies tend to hit at a certain scale. And like exactly like what Marcus was saying earlier, you know, scale is can be number of servers and the data set size and so on. That's one aspect of scale for sure. But it's not only that; it's also how many developers need to work together, how many schema changes you're doing, how you're doing that, downtime considerations, how you apply them without needing a maintenance window. These are the sort of things that we are addressing as a company now. And yeah, we're like fully, as I said, we're betting very hard on Postgres because we think it's the right database to use today, especially in AI, but really almost any use case up to us, you know, quite large scale.
And I do want to echo that. And a point that we're going to come back to is, you know, how is kind of the mad rush for AI changing this? Because I do think there's a conversation of, hey, you know, AI's got a lot of great answers, but it doesn't know your data. And so how do you get AI to know your data, and how do you get AI to know your data without letting AI tell the world about your data? And so there are some really interesting questions there about data sovereignty and the rest. And so we're definitely going to kind of pull into that as we go. And so I would like to, you know, point out one thing Tudor just said, and that is, you know, he said there was problems in Postgres. I would like to say there are challenges or opportunities in Postgres. I want to stress that he said problems only, and I only say that because there's a vibrant open source community around Postgres. It dates back to the 1990s. It's one of the better kind of true success stories of open source. And I kind of do want to, you know, pose that first question to the three of you, which is, you know, as we look at, you know, taking an open source project and extending it with a managed service in cloud, you know, how do we balance that? And what are the features that you kind of you're extending? And so I'll start there actually first with Kamal and you guys, because one of the first guys to do it. And so you guys are taking some of these open source things and saying, hey, you know, how do we respect the community, but also how do we extend it? And what are the key features that that someone should look to? Why would I want to manage service of this versus running it on my own?
Yeah, like look, the concept of managed services, if you go back, like it's not new, right? Like even now, it makes no sense for every organization to, for example, build a brand new hardware, brand new operating systems, write device drivers from scratch, right? And so we have been in the software industry have been reusing and leveraging stack. I think the abstractions are moving up. We started, you know, over time, you look at just the hypervisor, VMs, Kubernetes now. And so, and the abstractions will keep going up and up. And I think more and more abstractions will be found in developer community to make it easier to build on top of it. If you look at the entire AWS and all, they are also AWS, GCP, there. Everything is just all the services they offer are pretty much abstractions to make it easy for developers to quickly build. And AI, I would argue, is in some shape and form is a framework that is also allowing developers to build their applications faster and quickly. So in many ways, these are all the tools to make things easier to build. Now, with respect to your question about managed services and how you know, where the balance, I think the different organizations have taken different approaches. We have seen organizations who wants to stay 100% true to the open source model, and they see even building a managed service around it as a lock-in for their customers. We have also seen organizations where they completely overhauled their open source into closed source licenses and build a cloud around it. So, and there are a lot of companies in the spectrum in between. I think my personal view is that the balance is the key. I think the managed service aspect is fundamentally going back to the original thing, which is, hey, how do we make it easier for the companies to, or you know, to build their application on top of the abstraction, essentially, what is being offered, and they don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about the cost, the latency, the performance, the security, the reliability of it, and these things are fundamentally abstracted away by the provider to make it easier for the end customers to consume it. If they are just going to take and use the open source, let's say Xata as an example, if they just simply use the Postgres, they will probably have to, the reality is that they will probably have to hire a DBA team, and they have to fundamentally support Postgres. Are they in the fundamental business of that? Is that their core business expertise? No. And so, yes, can you do it that way? Of course you can do. You can you can build your own operating system if you want to, but the stupidity at its best. I think the smart companies will figure out the right way of doing the build versus buy, and where to take on a well-known abstraction while adhering to open standards, of course, so that if they have to move providers, they're not getting locked in, and they have. So I buy that argument. But I think in the world we live in, we need every startup and enterprise has to move fast, and we need to innovate quickly. We need to provide more value to the community and the services, and to meet our customer needs. And so it makes no sense, in my humble opinion, as to trying to basically build a whole operational sauce around the technology on which are not your differentiator or not your core competence. And I think so that's the lens I would view personally as, and I see managed services as not just getting the software or improvements on it. I see it as hey, I know somebody, an expert, that even if I have an issue at 2 a.m., they're going to take a look, they're going to be ahead of me, they're going to fix the issue, and I don't need to worry about it. And even if a disaster struck, they will coordinate and work with my team, and I will have the experts on my side without having me to hire and maintain that team or maintain that stack. And there is zero, like almost very low probability that I will be able to fork that stack, and I will be able to do innovation more than a provider whose bread and butter is that business. They're likely going to move laser fast, and they're going to provide a 10x more value and features in addition to support, as opposed to me trying to fork that something, trying to maintain and try to patch that thing, maintain CV patches, continue to upgrade, continue to add new features to it. There is no chance that's happening. That is fundamentally it will violate, because everybody has to do the prioritization. It will not fall below the line, and will never be prioritized. And I'll be much rather have from the business point of view, it makes so much sense. I'll much rather be relying upon a provider who can provide me that 10x innovation and provide that 10x expertise than what I can do at that 1/10 of the cost. So it just makes so much sense to leverage the managed services. Yeah.
I love it. And then I hate to interrupt, but you've just given me such a perfect softball to kind of toss it over to Tudor and ask, so, hey, you've got this cool new startup, and you're, providing a managed service that extends the value and extends the capabilities of what someone can do by leveraging Postgres. So can you actually walk us through, why Postgres, and then, what are the key features you're saying that, that your service should be extending? Because I think Kamal said it incredibly well. Hey, we're not reselling Postgres to you. We're reselling a managed service around it that makes Postgres, that you get to experience it without having to have the deep depth of expertise in the space. And we're going to add some additional features. So can you talk through those features that you're adding?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like how Kamal put it. There's to some degree a balance between the vendor lock-in of using a managed service and building stuff yourself, and that's also something that's on our mind quite a lot. So we're actually working towards minimizing and or keep that vendor lock-in to a minimum. So first of all, we are we're offering vanilla Postgres. Your interface your interface to it is the Postgres protocol, and that's just it's straight up directly to it. We don't have a complicated proxy or something like this. We used to have that in the Xata Lite platform, or we still have it, but it's as I was saying, it's our first attempt of this problem, and we realized that no, the market really wants Postgres with all its extensions, with all its features, and even if they don't need them today, they want to know that they are there in the future. So that's why we're like 100% Postgres compatible, and that's an important thing. And that's for making all the tools out there compatible, but also to reduce vendor lock-in. They can easily move from one service to another, and so on. Then when it comes to differentiation, we have a couple important ones. First of all, there's the copy on write branching. So that means that all the data that you have, you can instantly, it looks like you can instantly clone it, snapshot it, and start a new Postgres instance with it. Under the hood actually doesn't copy the data. It points to the same data, and if they are writes, that's why it's copy on write. If they are writes either to the parent branch or to the child branch, they will start diverging, and then we only store the different, the pages that are different, and so on. So that makes it a very good platform for doing various staging environments, testing environments, because you can branch all of your data. Then we have anonymization, which is important because it's like you want to create developer branches from as close as possible to your production data, but you don't want the actual production data because that might contain PII information, and you don't want to, there are compliance issues, and even beyond compliance and privacy, you don't want by accident a developer to email all your user base because the emails were in clear text in your database. So that's why, this story without anonymization is kind of incomplete. That's why we're investing a lot in the data anonymization. And then we have, for example, scale to zero, which means that a database branch that it's not used, think of a developer branch. You started a developer branch for a particular pull request, and the developer, just leave it there, opens the PR. Sometimes it sits there for weeks. It doesn't really make sense to run a database for all that period of time, right? So after a period of inactivity, the database automatically shut down, which means that you don't pay for compute. You only pay for storage, which is usually much, much less, especially due to the copy on write branching savings that we have. So it usually costs almost nothing, a branch that is hibernated, that's how we call it. And then when there's a new connection created to this branch, it automatically wakes up. So, like when the developer comes to it after 2 weeks and wants to test again, it will start up automatically, and then they can get to work. So we're making that frictionless. So, those are our main differentiators, going for now in this direction of staging environment, development environments, ephemeral environments. A lot of people do. But we also have companies using us for production, like to run the actual production database, and those are usually seeing cost reductions compared to other providers and so on. And it's like having their team of Postgres experts, like what Kamal was saying earlier. That's one important reason for people to go with such a service. You just get experts on board.
So Tudor,
a quick point here. I think we had also the open source story mentioned before, right? You're building something on top of open source, but I think at least what I know and what I see is that you're also contributing back, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the events that you sponsor and host and bring to life, but also in terms of code. Can you kind of elaborate on this also pretty briefly?
Yeah, we have a number of open source projects that we have developed over the years. and they are part of our hosted platform, so they kind of all work together well. But they are also open source projects that work with any Postgres provider, on-prem, RDS, Aurora, and so on. Everything that all our open source projects, we mean them as Postgres projects, not Xata projects. So we do PG roll, which is about zero downtime schema changes. Again, an important reason for which you would want database branching is to test your schema changes. And PG roll allows you to test that and then apply them to your main branch with zero downtime. So you're not risking table locks that would cause downtime and this sort of thing. So PG roll is, at the moment, I would say, our most popular open source project. We have pgstream as well. Pgstream does logical replication, CDC, for Postgres that includes schema changes, which is nice because that's, again, one of the things that are at the moment missing in Postgres. There is work upstream to work that, but in the meantime, we have pgstream. Also, it's where we do the anonymization. It happens in pgstream, so that whole part I was talking earlier, why it's important to have your data anonymized and so on. That's actually an open source project, and you can use with any Postgres tool. And then our newest open source project is the Xata agent. It's an AI agent that it uses AI kind of as your Postgres expert, and it can do things like automatically suggest indexes, for example, to optimize your application. It can take scale up and scale down decisions so that you always optimizes your cost and automatically scales up when needed. It can do all sorts of recommendations. And that's the main goal. And again, it's an open source project. Works with RDS, works with Aurora, works with our platform, and many others.
I have so many questions, but I'm going to limit to two. Okay. But by the way, I will call out the PG stream is such a pain point in the community, not having a logical replication. So kudos to you guys on that. My first question is, for the initial description you mentioned, sounds very similar to Neon. How would you, just for the community, how would you differentiate Xata from Neon? And I have a follow-up, if I may. You mentioned about the Xata agents. Very cool. I think it's like opening a can of worm of questions, because is it going to do things? Is it going to do things on production database? Is it automatically create? Suggesting is one thing, doing is another. And
absolutely,
even if it says it's going to improve, but God knows what to do. Like creating an index doesn't always mean necessarily that every query will be improved, because it may have now you are introducing index, you have to maintain that index. That brings a cost on the right side when you're inserting a new record, for example, or updating a new record. And so I would love to hear, like, where is the fine balance? Like, how are you striking the balance of the agent on what it can and what it cannot do?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with the Neon question first. And indeed, when we like, sometimes we describe Xata to potential customers, and they will be like, "Oh, I get it. So you are like Neon, but more flexible." So it's like it's their words, and I don't like too much to like refer to us as opposed to another startup, because there are differences for sure, and actually the technology approach that we have is quite different from theirs. But like, in 3 words, this would be like Neon but more flexible. How are we more flexible? We for, like, being vanilla Postgres, that gives us a number of advantages. So it's easier for us to adopt, for example, new extensions and so on. Then we have this concept of bring your own cloud, which means it's a little bit of a hybrid model, if you want. We can run in your AWS or GCP or Azure account. We can even run on-prem. Essentially, what we need is a Kubernetes cluster, and our control plane stays in our region. It's a single AWS region that we have for the control plane. Then this bring your own cloud for customers that want to start the Postgres instances in their account. then we can support that way. And it's still a managed service. So, all the advantages that we were speaking earlier, they still apply. We take care of major version upgrades or upgrades. We take Postgres out of your plate without you having to jump, because especially the latency, it's critical with the database. There's often, a lot of chatter between the application and the database. The security is also critical. You don't want it to of course there's a password and there's TLS and so on, but having to go over the public internet, that's always like it's not something that you can do. And of course there are various options there, like VPC peering and so on, right? But bring your own cloud is it gives you the most control, and then you pay your infrastructure costs, you pay them directly to your cloud provider. So then you might have your own deals, you might use credits, you might, and so on. So there are advantages there. So we're more flexible from this deployment point of view, for sure. That's that's the difference. Also, this anonymization, Neon also has they are they are addressing this use case as well for staging, anonymized staging, then copy and write branching for it. But for us is the main product focus. So we are just more focused on the air. We already have from that point of view, we have more functionality. It's easier to set up. It's you can do all sorts of anonymization rules and so on that they don't have. So on that, on that particular front, we are the more polished product already, even though we are younger. Then of course, it's like they have been acquired by Databricks recently. I have been through some acquisition myself, so I am expecting them to slow down a little bit. We'll see how things play out.
It takes a while to count all that money, so.
Yes, exactly. Right. Should we go to the agent question?
I mean, maybe before we go to the agent question, I can kind of balance a little bit what you are doing with what I see when working with startups, right? To give it a practical flavor to it. So in the times when there was no shortage on money, on funding, right, and growth at all costs was the theme. Maybe some of the challenges that we are discussing today were just not apparent, at least, right? But with the shift to profitable growth, I see quite some customers that I'm covering or that I'm working with, that they are taking more scrutiny on that, to the extent that they will also look at, hey, how can I map my infrastructure costs into expense accounts, like, hey, this is for production, like cost of goods sold, versus, hey, this is for R&D, and so on and so on. And now, maybe for production, they are still fine with a rock solid solution, and they are willing to pay the premium, because that's where, they want to make sure their customers have, a superior experience and nothing to worry about. But on the R&D side, right, the question is a bit more nuanced. So first of all, maybe you don't have only one environment, you have multiple environments, as you say. I would say in an ideal world, you would even have one environment per developer or for pull request, right? And if you have to spin up a database every time for such an environment, that's not only effort, that's also infrastructure costs that then sometimes suddenly become transparent, right? If you have this kind of separation of the cloud bill into these different accounts. And what I would, and I mean, this is only getting worse with AI, and we come to this topic, I think, right after. But there is then the challenge, I would say, that well, you can still create logical databases or schema, right, to get around this to some extent in the same database, and then at least the provisioning time and maybe some of the costs would go away. But initializing the database with some meaningful data is still an issue, right? So you can have canned data, but then it's outdated. You want to have fresh data as much as possible. And I think here, I think the solution that you outlined before, your solution, comes in very handy and makes all the difference in my opinion. And I'm sometimes surprised that this is not a topic that has been long solved, right? But that's what you're here for, and I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I should have maybe even insisted a little bit more when talking about the flexibility in deployment. A deployment model that we encourage is exactly what you said. You keep production being your RDS or Aurora, which you already trust, and it's like also you don't need to migrate, because migrations of database, it's a very costly proposition usually. So we do encourage people to leave their production database where it is and start the staging replica on the Xata platform with this PG stream of data, continuously copying and anonymizing it. I like to say that we're not competing with AWS RDS or Aurora. We're making those services better by adding copy and write branching and this type of functionality. This is how we see it.
Well, I do think that's so. I think that it's a natural transition to start kind of talking about AI and what's next. I think as we look through 2025, there's going to be a lot of different choices for kind of theme of the year, but one of them might very much be Claude Code's dangerously skip permissions, which if you haven't been a vibe coder, there's a setting you can give Claude Code that says, hey, listen, stop asking me these stupid questions and just do it. Which when you're first vibe coding seems like a great idea and this thing's magic. And eventually you'll find that every once in a while it goes and does something you didn't expect it to do. And so I do think there used to be an old line in the networking world that you're not really a network administrator until you've downed your network in production once. I think there's going to be a new line. You're not really a vibe coder until you've destroyed your own data set or your own application, your own app build once. And so I think the next kind of logical so I do think a lot of what Xata does in terms of allowing, allowing for people to access data sources in a safe way is incredibly important, not just from the old school way of looking at it, but also kind of the new reality we live in today, which is people are going to do things quickly, and at 3 a.m. a developer might just say, that seems like a great idea, and press go. And things might just happen in the background, and that's kind of scary. And so moving a database is insanely painful. Backing up and restoring a database at 3 a.m. in production is more painful. And so kind of let's talk about cloud controls and how we build systems securely in this era of AI. So how do we allow people to go fast and still move forward? And so maybe pitch that to you first, Kamal, just because that's a huge chunk of what Omnistrate does, and what a control plane does is allow people to quickly spin up environments, and then we'll turn it back over to Tudor to kind of explain why Xata does that specifically for Postgres. So Kamal, I want to kind of talk about what is a control plane, and how do you actually allow developers to be developers without melting things?
Yeah, I think first of all, what do we do very quickly? We help companies. We are a developer framework. We help companies build their own control planes, so they can build their own distribution channel. That could be PaaS, SaaS, BYOC, on-prem, wherever you're trying to distribute. I think there are common challenges around. We talked about how enabling our provider customers or our customers in terms of how they will be able to do the deployments and manage their deployments, govern their deployments, and all that stuff, standard stuff. And then on the other hand, how would the providers themselves will put the cost controls and security controls and things like operational aspects, looking at the health monitoring and understanding the fleet, how the things are operating, doing upgrades, how do you manage CI/CD? So there are a lot of questions that needs to come, and each one of these things have to be tenant specific. And how do you now piece them together is essentially what we do. So with respect to one of the things that we rolled out also is agent for the control planes to make it easier. So now our customers can go and simply also ask questions. Hey, how is my upgrade going, the last upgrade going? Was there any outage in the last 5 days from the cloud providers? And how many customers are impacted by that? Tell me more about this customer. Give me generate the report or the operational report for this particular customer, because I want to know. Renewal is coming very soon. I need to tell me everything I need to know. The pricing, their subscription, when it is ending, when was up, are there any recent events or incidents about that? And it will generate a report. And so we have added an AI agent in itself to make it easier for our customers to operate essentially that fleet by asking such questions and making it easier for them to operate. Of course, that's a very different aspect to what Tudor is going to do. I think I'm just going to hand it off to Tudor, which is he's going to talk about from his own customer's point of view, how he is bringing in agents and making it from the application point of view, bringing in agents and making it easier to use and make it easier to leverage some of the functionalities offered by Xata.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, an important topic, and I think there was already a couple of documented cases where people, were super productive, but then at the end of the week, the agent dropped the production database and kind of unrolled all that. Of course, this would typically not happen in more sophisticated companies, because they would develop against a developer database or a staging, and wouldn't give access to a coding agent directly to production. At least I hope that's the case. Most people wouldn't do that. But even if it's let's say you have a staging setup, and you want the agent to have access to the realistic data so it can do its work, right? So you're doing the staging, but even then, if it drops that staging setup and then it takes you hours to set it up again, that's a lot of loss in productivity, right? And then there will be engineering on the team that will say, let's not use this AI agents and anymore, and then things like this, right? So I think it's very useful to be able to create a branch, let it work there. The agent can just work on that branch, do its things, test, and then it comes back to the results. For sure that whatever it did there is just a branch. You can delete it, you can reset it, you can start a new one, and it's no problem at all, right? So it's just a lot easier, and then you can just let it work. You don't have to approve every time. So I think that helps a lot, and I think the AI platforms will need that. Like the vibe coder platforms will need this functionality, because without it, we'll keep hearing about these stories where the built-in agent deleted all the data and things like this. It happens all the time still, I think, and I don't think it's a problem that the models will solve anytime soon. It's like in a way the agent is motivated to solve the problem, and sometimes it's like, let's have a fresh start. Why don't it's going to be easier if we start fresh without any data, things like this. So it still happens all the time. I think it's a real pain point. So yeah, this is I think copy on write branching is the perfect solution for that. For our own agent, because our own agent actually needs access to production in order to monitor it and so on. The decision that we've taken there is that we're not going to run SQL generated by AI. So it only uses preset tools. We have a set of tools that use SQL written by us, or at least reviewed by us. So, things like getting the connections, getting the various metrics, getting vacuum stats, all this kind of stuff. It's like normal SQL that we have written. The agent can execute and get the results of that. All of them are read only, so they won't have a direct implication, and that's the data that it gets from production, only preset SQL. Then it can start a branch and test whatever it wants to test in that branch. For example, let's say it investigates your slow queries. It thinks that a query is slow because of a lack in index. And then what it can do is create a branch. In that branch, add the index, rerun the query, confirm that it's faster, and then tells you, look, like if you run this, you will expect this improvement in that query time. And it won't run that for you. So then it's you who adds it to the code, wherever, like that's anyway a different. You typically not run that directly against production. You'll put it in your source control system. There will be a migration and so on. So anyway, that's we consider that or put that on the developer. So that's how we do it, so that it's safe and there's not much risk in running the agent against the production data.
So Tudor, that.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly ask the question. Tudor, that makes a lot of sense, and in some ways, at Omnistrate also we do the same thing, which is our customers are not comfortable running any like a agentic agent on top of to manage especially their infrastructure, because the control plane is also essentially managing the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And you cannot just randomly do and execute something. You create a mess. And so we fundamentally rely upon the constructs which are pre-built, and the agents can only operate on top of that construct. So, and the constructs themselves are safeguarded. So similar to your point, what the core preset of the queries are written, and you're operating on top of it. So you have a building blocks on which you're operating, as opposed to doing any random thing that you can do.
Yeah.
The question I do have though is, there are a lot of times, especially in the database world, where fundamentally little bit different from the platform world, is in database world you have schema changes. You made some schema changes, and a lot of people want to iterate faster, and they make changes in the, let's say, staging environment and their developer environment. They want to now push those changes. So when it comes time to push those changes in production, are you applying the changes that was decisions that were made by the agents already, and you are just replicating those changes to production, or are you asking agent to rethink essentially and reapply the commands? Because now because non-deterministic by nature, it can come up with a completely different outcome than what the same prompt that you provided for the non-production environment, right? So you see, so I was just curious how you guys like encourage your customers, and what is the typical best practices around that?
Yeah, we actually put a lot of thought and work into this space, and this is the main reason we started pgrole, our open source project for schema changes, is exactly this, because we wanted even before AI, we wanted to make it easy for people to test their schema changes on a branch. But that's really only half the problem, because then you still have to apply it to production. And now if the data between production and staging is very similar, like the same data but anonymized, you already reduce the risk to some degree. But it's still problematic, because there are many cases where in order to safely apply the schema changes, you need multiple steps. Like, for example, if you add a column and you want to make it not null, then that doesn't just work because it's supposed to be not null, but you have data in your database, you have to add not null with the default value. And if you can have a default value, then the solution is right there. You just add the default value. But in some situations, you don't have a default value that works, so then you need some logic to create that, to backfill the data, right? And then when you get to those situations, it actually gets quite complex. Sometimes you need 4-5 PRs interleaved with creating backfilling of data scripts and so on. This slows teams down. When they hit one of these, it's like a major speed bump for teams then when they have to deal with this kind of stuff. This is why we developed pgrole. It's like kind of automating this whole thing, and then you have you make a plan, you tested it on a staging branch, then this plan is guaranteed to not cause downtime because we never take logs for a longer period of time, and it's just safe to run against your production database. So yeah, in short, we had to create a whole open source project for this problem specifically, and we didn't actually want to do it, but we didn't, we didn't find a satisfying answer otherwise. And PG role is getting quite popular actually in the Postgres community.
It is known to be a notorious problem, right? Like in the database community. And I'm just for the community or this audience out there, just if I can summarize what you said, you're basically saying your customers can take their production database, create a branch, so they get this copy of the data, do the schema changes, test everything, that everything is working, and they capture the plan, and then you can apply the same plan going into production, and that have a far more deterministic thing. I mean, of course, there is still a window in which the new data may be added and that may violate, and
Exactly.
anything can happen. But it does take care of 99.9% of the edge cases, because most of the time, especially with schema, half of the time at least I have seen in my practice is just a human error more than actually.
Exactly.
Right. So and there are environment differences, the second culprit, so that comes into play, right? And so those, and then there obviously there's a long tail of issues that can happen when you're applying these such kind of things, but it will take care of a lot of those.
Exactly. This is what we hear. It's human error, but to me, always human errors are because of poor tooling. That's just a sign of poor tooling.
That's exactly right.
So that's
maybe a quick question to both of you, Kamal and Tudor. I mean, we are talking here about how to safeguard these AI agents and stuff, but let's look at the upside as well. I mean, can you kind of elaborate from basically the operations that you are running? How much more efficient does it get by utilizing these agents as compared to a scenario that we had before, where there was a human operator looking at optimizing the database and stuff like this?
I'll be honest, as I have been doing software engineering for a long time. It has changed significantly this year, and it's like models and AI assistants have existed already for 2-3 years, but I think this year the agentic coding tools have gotten to the point that it just changed the way it works. I'm tech optimist and so on, so I don't think it will take our jobs, but I think it's a major productivity booster. We had such major productivity boosters in the past as well, so it's not that new. Back in the day with the invention of the C programming language, that was probably an even greater booster in productivity. Of course, there were those early days, but in front end developers, I would say React had a similar impact. So then it didn't cause people to lose jobs. On the contrary, it created more jobs. So it's like I'm optimistic in that sense that it's going to be a net positive for the industry.
And for your own agent, for the agent that you create for Postgres, can you already say something about the gain that you experience on your own while utilizing or having it by your side? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we did it for our, it's a scratch your own itch sort of thing for which we started the agent, because we, especially on the Xata Lite side, we manage lots of Postgres databases, and there on the Xata Lite, because it's meant, as I was saying, it's a product meant for front-end engineers, people that actually don't want to deal with a database. They don't actually care so much that it's Postgres. They just want something that works. So there it's often creating queries that are inefficient and so on. So we were like thinking, well, why do we wake up during the night being paged by this sort of things? It's like maybe the agent could do it for us, and this is where like an AI agent could do it for us, and this is how we started the project. And we have been using it internally, and that's it's definitely helping us. We're not at the point where we would give it too much control over the infrastructure, but we're definitely seeing the benefits of having something dealing with the most repetitive problems and so on that we are seeing.
Yeah, I'll quickly add to what Tudor said, right?
Mm.
Like, I think Tudor is 100% right. And this agenting thing is 100% improving the productivity. No questions on that. But I think the real question is, it's just not a answer to everything. Like, if you imagine, like you have to follow the best practices. It's just not, it doesn't mean that yes, you have an agent that start running things randomly on production and expect things will. No, you have to still follow the best practices, and that's where we were going back to the discussion of the PG rule. You still have to create the branch, you still have to create the plan, and then you have to take the deterministic plan and apply that in the production database. So you just still have to apply the best practices. And the second thing I would say is, you still need an expert. While talking, like, yes, Claude and all, everything is amazing. Like, I agree with you. It's just came so far along, but you still need an expert to know that what is right and what is wrong, and just make the decision, because it may be right 99% of the time, but that 0.1% of the time it is wrong. It can cause you hefty nonsense, or do something completely insane things. And so you need to know what is right and wrong. So yes, so I think our Omnistrate CTO Alok, I'll quote his word. He says, leverage AI, don't delegate to AI. So that's what the keyword he used. So I'll just quote his words. I really love that phrase and how he phrased it, the overall equation.
And so we are at the top of the hour, so we do need to start wrapping it up. But to kind of finalize the where we're at on the agentic AI, there are two things I'm really excited about as it relates to both Omnistrate and Xata, and that is, in a former life, I helped Microsoft build out the first of the IT maturity models. We called it Core IO, in which we went out and talked to some of the largest IT shops in the world, and we said, hey, what makes good IT, and its processes and procedures, and making sure you're doing things in a correct way. And in that, I found one universal truth, which is organizations that made the best way, the easiest way for the people, were the most secure, because people, your developers, your IT, your people in general are like water. They will take the easiest path. And so what Omnistrate does, what Xata does, at the core, is make the secure, easy, correct way of working with your data the easiest way, and that will lead to more secure code and safer solutions. And I don't care how much paperwork or process or rules you have in place. If you make it hard for people to innovate, they will find a way to innovate around you. And so I'm genuinely excited for products like what you guys are building, because it meets that standard, and it helps people go faster, but helps people go faster by doing it the right way. And so with that, we do need to kind of close it out. I do end with kind of that, I do like ending with kind of my one new kind of favorite question, which is, what's your new favorite prompt or AI trick this week? And so what'd you kind of learn this week? And so Marcus, you're smirking. I'm hoping that means that you kind of you found one. So kind of what's your favorite AI prompt that you've learned this week?
I'm not so sure about prompt, but a new tool that I found this week. Actually, I just got used to have it today, is Mem0. So I was tinkering around a little bit today with context windows and memory functions, and that's actually pretty awesome. So
Love it.
That was my learning of the week, so to say.
Love it. I'm gonna let the experts go last, so I'm gonna throw in mine. Mine's is an interesting learning in terms of just the differences of what ChatGPT, what the OpenAI guys are doing with their Codex CLI versus what Claude Code's doing. And I know everyone out there has probably played with Claude Code by now. It's an insane tool. They've turned off all they turned on all the features and it can do pretty much anything. But that's also a little dangerous because it can do anything. And the first thing people say is turn on the dangerous. Don't do that. But in general, I still like Cloud Code the most. However, Codex put out a very sandboxed solution, and so it's a very good code tool. But it also has rules. It says it will just tell you, no, I can't do that. I'll walk you through doing that for you, but I can't do that. And so, if you're newer to vibe coding, highly recommend actually starting with Codex because it won't do a lot of things that Cloud Code will do, and you need to learn those skills. And so, learn the things that Codex won't let you do, and then once you're bored doing those, you can switch back to Codex to Cloud Code and let Cloud Code do it for you. Colin, what's your kind of favorite thing this week?
I think one thing we found is that we were trying to build our own agent, and versus what we realized is that just having a MCP server as a tool plus Cloud instructions, it goes far farther and much easier as opposed to trying to build your own agent. So that was one learning. The second, I would just say, we're playing with a bunch of marketing tools, and just so fascinating to see. And kudos to some of the companies out there like Golpo and Wizard and Descript and Teleprompter. My goodness, what you can do now, and how much they make it simpler to generate and build marketing content. So it's fascinating to see some of these at least verticals will be completely rehauled, and I can't imagine like what the next 2-3 years will unfold on that. Yeah.
My tip, I don't know if I learned it this week, but still relatively recently, there's this concept of putting an Agents.md file in your repository, which is, I think different agents use different files. So internally we have something that does kind of a bit of translating, putting it in the right places for each of the agents. Personally, I usually use Cursor, and when it cannot figure it out, then I try Cloud Code. But I like the Cursor as a kind of full ID experience, doing everything, and having this file where you tell it, this is how you run the tests, this is how this is how you do this on that, this is how you can test this thing, this is just in a markdown file in English. That actually helps a lot, reduces a lot of the false paths that it sometimes take. Coding conventions, all these type of things. It helps a lot.
Love it. Thank you, gentlemen. Wonderful conversation, and I learned a lot, which is kind of the only reason I'm here. Is I get to listen to really smart people and learn stuff. So, thank you all. Everyone can join us for episode 16 coming up in 2 weeks, and you also see the new name of our stream. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you gentlemen for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.